Now, Dave, of course, the most memorable showdown of this card, though not technically the match that went on last, is the return of Hulk Hogan to the WWF ring for the first time since leaving the organization in 1993, betraying Vince McMahon and going to the WCW, and we know how that all went. So he's back. They make the deal. He's back as Hollywood Hogan, and he works The Rock. We talked about this match in the context of WrestleMania 6 and the contrasts and things with the Hogan Warrior match and how this match played out. And Hogan works his ass off in this match, not in terms of, flying off the top rope or anything, but in terms of controlling the audience and really showing The Rock kind of a higher level of manipulating the people and bringing them along for a ride. Your thoughts on what it is that stands out to you and resonates when you see and think about this match at WrestleMania 18?
Well, I mean, part of it was very lucky that it was Toronto, because Toronto was such a huge Hulk Hogan city. I think it was probably the best Hulk Hogan city in the world. Hogan and Orndorff did that great thing. Hogan drew like crazy there. Hogan Warrior was there. You remember the Hogan Warrior match? Every building I went to, I remember I was at, I don't know if it was San Francisco or Oakland, but I remember I was at a house show and I got reports from all the house shows. And they would announce, coming up at, this is February of that year, right? Coming up at WrestleMania, the Ultimate Warrior against Hulk Hogan. Everybody booed Hulk Hogan's name and cheered Warrior's name because it was like, you want the new thing, right? It wasn't even, Hogan had been champion. You just want the change, and the Warrior was the new young thing. And it was just a cool thing to root for Warrior over Hogan. And I thought, WrestleMania, it's going to be, it's going to be 70-30 Warrior. Well, it ended up being, I don't know what it was, and they didn't boo Warrior, but they clearly were for Hulk Hogan in that building in Toronto. And they were lucky. I think in any other building it would have gone the other way. Or most other buildings anyway. I mean, Hogan also had the ability to manipulate. That could have changed it had he wanted to change it. But never, I've seen plenty of buildings, my God, where they booed every mention of Hulk Hogan's name, and every time he was on the screen, and then he comes out and does his routine and they all cheer. I'm going like, holy crap. It's like, now I get, I used to always joke about that because, in the end of WCW, like the 1999 period when they were just going to hell, I remember I went to an event in the Nassau Coliseum, and every mention of Hulk Hogan, boo, boo, boo. Then he comes out and everybody cheered. Now it was 2,600 people at the Nassau Coliseum. It was embarrassing as shit, right? That whole night. But in the building, it's like Hulk Hogan was still Hulk Hogan, larger than life. And that's when it was like, now I get why Eric thinks the way he does about Hogan. And I actually told Eric Bischoff, you got to, what you need to do? You need to actually not go to these matches, and you need to watch on television, because millions of people are watching on television, and you got 5,000 people in this arena. And the 5,000 people in this arena, they're going gaga because they're seeing Hulk Hogan, and it reminds them of their childhood, and Hulk's got so much charisma. But if you watch it on TV and you kind of see how it's going, Hulk's not that, when you see him every week, it's not that special of a thing. When he's just coming to your town, they're going to, he's so good at manipulating. So there's that. But anyway, part of it was Toronto, and part of it was Hogan's so freaking good. And, he was supposed to be the heel, and he absolutely wasn't. And, what a great performance. Another great performance by Hulk Hogan. And, I think that The Rock would tell you that was the best match of his career. I don't think it was, but I think he would tell you that.
In regards to this match as well, you talk about Hogan manipulating the crowd and not playing the heel. I don't know, was Hogan's NWO run killed before the show or after the show, and why?
It was pretty much the next day, right?
Right.
Yeah, the next day in Montreal because of after Toronto, and then they had Hall and Nash attack and all that. Or they may have even done it at the end of the match. So did they do the attack and Rock and Hogan fought together in Toronto, or was that in Montreal the next night? I don't even remember. I remember seeing it.
I think what happened was Hogan and Rock posed down together, and I think the attack happened the next night.
Okay. But they knew they were going to do it. The thing is that they knew that Hogan was going to be cheered because at all the fan stuff, the people were cheering so much. It was the last couple of days. So I think that they changed it, and Hogan worked the match a certain way to become a face, because that was the idea. He was going to come out of it as a face anyway. So
Right.
it wasn't like he was, doing something he wasn't supposed to do. And the NWO thing fell apart the next day, but they already knew it was going to happen. It wasn't like yeah.
Were you surprised, Dave, that they made the deal to bring Hulk Hogan back to the WWF in 2002?
No, I was surprised they brought in Scott Hall.
Sure.
But not Hulk Hogan and Kevin Nash. No. Just because Scott's rep spoke for itself at the time. The funny thing is that they had kept that thing. I mean, it was Vince's deal, and Vince was like telling people in the company that he wasn't doing it. You know what I mean? That all these rumors weren't true, because there was a guy who was very, very close to Hulk who was, emailing me through this and telling me like what's going on in the negotiations, and also, pretty much that, the same thing, that, they really shouldn't take Scott. Scott's going to ruin this thing. So that's why I was kind of surprised that because at different points Scott was both in and not in, and I thought that like the reputation would keep Scott from coming in, but it didn't. But at the same time, everyone in the company was just like, no, it's not true. It's not true. I mean, Vince, they really tried to keep it quiet. So I wasn't stunned. And I always thought Hogan would come back. It's only natural. I mean, no matter what people said, it's like it's only business. Of course he's going to come back. He's always, every time Hogan and Vince had their big falling out and Vince would bury him, I go like, of course he's going to come back. It's when he was in TNA, it's like, of course he's going to come back. It's just, that's just how wrestling is. And so, yeah, I mean, no, I wasn't surprised at all that they came in, other than Scott, because I thought that Scott was more trouble than he was worth and was going to drag him down.
On that burial point, Dave, we charted that, and looking through WrestleManias 1 through 10, and coming to the point where, 10 is the first Hogan-less Mania, and of course shortly after that show, and the negotiations are going on during that show for Hogan to go to WCW in '94, and shortly after that show he makes his debut and becomes more than persona non grata. As we talked about it, WrestleMania 12, they conclude the billionaire Ted skits designed to completely mock him. You didn't feel like enough distance had been created between the two that, I mean, it took the collapse of WCW for this deal to make sense, and that wasn't something that necessarily could have been forecast, that WCW would hit such a profound cliff as it did. You didn't feel at any point, even in the mid-90s, that these two wouldn't get back together?
Oh, as far as like if you're asking me in like 1997?
Yeah, it wasn't when Hogan first left, it didn't seem like he would ever come back.
Oh, 94, I thought it was inevitable that it would happen someday. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 97, when WCW was really hot and WWF wasn't. And Eric was how he was. Yeah. At that point, I thought Hogan was WCW for life. Yeah. But when WCW was going down in 2000, I thought, oh yeah, of course. Did I think he was going to come back for a long run or win the championship like he did in 2002? No. But as far as like this comeback for a month or two every year, yeah. Did I think it would be as big as it was in 2002? I would probably say no, because it really was bigger than I thought. But him coming back, I always thought it was inevitable. It's just, I've seen too much, and it's just, you're going to do the right thing for business, and when Hogan's not around, you want Hogan. When he's around for too long, you want him to go away. And Hogan got that. That's why he would always go away. And TNA didn't get that, and that's why, Hogan didn't mean so much in TNA after a while.
Were you at all surprised when Steve Austin turned down working with Hogan?
I don't know. I don't know, because it was all really weird, because it was like Hogan was coming in and we didn't know which one he was going to work with. It was either Rock or Austin. And, there were issues with Hogan and Austin at that time. And I think that Austin regrets them now. Mm-hmm. And probably, it's a different mentality in today and in 2002. I think, maybe he thinks that, he could have, and then I mean, whatever it was. No, I wasn't surprised because you also had the deal of Austin, in his mind, had surpassed Hogan. And, I don't know if there was bitterness in the sense of how the whole WCW thing went down when they came in. You got to remember, they came in and Steve Austin went from being a key guy to being a nobody. He lost to Jim Duggan in 30 seconds after he was doing that feud with Steamboat over the U.S. title. Then he was jobbing to the Renegade. You know what I mean? He was, to Hogan's guys and Hogan's thing. And now I'm bigger than Hogan. So I don't need him. No, I mean, now, again, do you think it would never happen? Probably figured at some point it would happen, and just it didn't because Austin was injured. I mean, if Austin wasn't injured, 2005 or so, one of those years, it would have happened for sure.
And conversely, probably more than anything, because the lack of that history between he and Hogan, The Rock had absolutely no qualms with getting in there with Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 18. He loved it. And I know, Dave, you've talked a lot with The Rock over the years. I mean, what does this – you mentioned he would say it's his greatest match. What did it mean to him? It seemed like kind of a shoot that this was a massive deal to him to be in there with Hogan.
I don't know if it was, growing up watching Hogan because he couldn't really – I mean, he never really could work with Dusty. By the time he did work with Flair, but Flair was pretty old by the time it happened. You know what I mean? So those guys of his childhood, he really, I don't remember. I don't think he ever worked with Roddy Piper. He may have. I don't remember it. But the guys of his childhood, when he was running around with his, where his dad was working, he never, that was the one that he did get to work with. I mean, I don't know what else. I mean, he'd already made it, so it wasn't like, this is the night I knew I made it. I mean, to me, he made it when he, maybe the first match in the first Mania in Philadelphia with Austin, when you're main eventing Mania and you're doing record business. I think that's pretty much making it. And he was already, a movie guy by this point in time. But I think that there's that thrill and the crowd was just so freaking hot for that match. They could do no wrong in the sense. So I think that it was, that kind of reaction, something that a performer, wants and very rarely gets. Even in your best match, you don't get that reaction. That match hadn't, so I think that may have been part of it.
In the show closing bout, Triple H faces Chris Jericho for the undisputed WWF Championship. Now, lapsed fans may look at this show and be kind of confused as to what undisputed is supposed to indicate. Talk about the WWF's plans and kind of what ended up happening. They absorbed WCW. Their championship becomes the World Championship, the WCW Championship on WWF television. And then they go in late 2001. Jericho wins the undisputed title. Talk about your memories of how that came together.
Yeah, and he was like the last guy you would think it was going to happen to, right?
Right.
Because it was Jericho, Austin, Rock, and was the fourth guy Triple H or Kurt? I don't remember.
Triple H,
It was Kurt.
No, it was Kurt. It was Kurt because Triple H. I think Triple H was injured.
He came back and won the Rumble. That's right.
He was supposed to come back on this show. All the advertising was for him to come back on this show, and he actually came back the next month. And of the four, the one that you thought wasn't going to win was Jericho, and maybe that's why. But, the whole thing was it was a place setter for Triple H. So they figure, the place setter guy, the one who, the place setter guy, rather than sacrifice Austin or Rock or, they might, whatever, we'll do Jericho since he's the, he'll be happy to have that run with the title and he'll be happy when it's his time to lose. So it's like he won the title. He was a lame duck champion the day he won it, and everyone knew it. So it was what it was. I mean, as far as Jericho, I think became like a real world champion years later. This one was more of a, you got the belt, but I mean, it helped him in the sense Rock put him over a couple times, not just at that. I mean, he put him over at the, was it January, February pay-per-view as well. I mean, Rock did a lot for Chris Jericho. He Chris Jericho was the guy. I mean, they did that big angle where Chris Jericho was the guy who couldn't win the big one. And as a heel, So that meant he had to beat The Rock, and I'm going like, The Rock's so much above Chris Jericho. Is The Rock really going to put him over? But The Rock was that kind of a guy. He would do that angle, and as a babyface, where the babyface shouldn't lose to a heel so much lower than him, but Rock, Rock had no problems, and it helped Chris Jericho a great deal, that credibility. And, at least he had having the title, even as a lame duck, is probably better than not having it. He did get to main event Mania, even though it was not really the main event. And, in the benefit of hindsight, we all know which match is going to go on last, but they still had the mentality that the title match got to go on last. And, they didn't realize how big Hogan and Rock was going to be.